Un izskatās, ka svešumā jūs dzirdēsiet kādā citā koncertā. Varbūt nākošajā par mīlestību 29. maijā. Un tālāk mēs nobeigsim ar tautas dziesmu uz bišķiņ jautrākas nots. Un tā būs veltīta, kam vilksim košu zelta jostu apkārt savu tēvu zemi. Lai mirdz mūsu tēvu zeme, kā actiņa gradzenā. Paldies! Paldies par uzmanību!
Paldies Īrisai par visu to darbu, ko viņa ir ielikusi. Now, this is a very consolidated and very incomplete and much abbreviated bio for our presenter today, Val Samonis. He was born in Soviet-occupied Lithuania in 1951 of parents who had been headquarters for underground resistance, the Mezhebrod. The family was eventually tracked down and deported to Poland, where Val, an exemplary student, actively led student discussion groups and was eventually, and probably justifiably, accused of being a dissident. He won a Fulbright scholarship, went to the USA to study, and there applied for political immunity. He later returned to Lithuania, Poland, and Russia. After 1990, he was an advisor to Gorbachev's assistant, who at one time toured Ontario to glean farming techniques for the USSR. He served in the paramilitary in the Suwalski Gap as the chief of artillery, so he knows that area rather well. Educated in USA, UK, Canada, Singapore, Poland, Val Samonis, a PhD and a CPC, has gained 4 decades of cross-cultural functional research, business intelligence, teaching, editing, and blue ribbon advisory experience, combining his theoretical and hands-on empirical approaches to education, business, technology, and modern policy frontiers globally. He's an outside-of-the-box analyst, a transformational thinker, and an intellectual communicator. He's fluent in English, German, Russian, Polish, Lithuanian, along with some Spanish and French. He has nurtured extensive contacts, especially in emerging markets, where he has worked with top business and educational reformers, among them being 5 Nobel laureates in the Stanford Economic Transition Group. He's lectured globally on ITC knowledge economy. He has amazingly wide-ranging breadth of global experience with multiple universities, governments, international financial and economic organizations. He has managed and worked in a hands-on manner in numerous international research and advisory blue ribbon teams and digital networks. He served as an advisor to the Czech government, Lithuanian parliament, several global organizations, and various multinational corporations. And he has also taught right here in the U of T. In his spare time, Valis did manage to be married and have 3 daughters. And so with all of that, we are very privileged to welcome Val Samonis to our community for today's gathering. Val, all yours. Ever heard of technical details?
1, 2. Okay, good, great. Yeah, it's a bit too. Okay, but that's okay. Sveiki, broliukai. You understand that I don't understand Latvian, but heard something about the Latvian and Lithuanian interaction, friendship, love, etc. So, his name One, two, one. Good, great, absolutely great. Okay. His name was Daumantas. But you in the West could not have known him, could not have heard about him. He was one of the top commanders of the Lithuanian freedom fighters, 1945-1950. And the last headquarters of the Lithuanian freedom fighters in our farm in the Suwałki Gap. Now you know Suwałki Gap, due to those problems with Russian aggression, which is on the southern side, on the Polish side of Lithuania, with many ethnic Lithuanians living there. And my family, close to 500 years, lived there. Daumantas, his name, is written in blood in the Lithuanian and the Baltic history. Freedom fighters. You have heard about freedom fighters. You have heard about other anti-communist activities at that time. Freedom fighters, partisans, or even they use the term forest brothers. And we wrote with the historian, my friend from the Polish Academy of Sciences, we wrote a short introduction to the world in several languages about the servant leadership of the Lithuanian freedom fighters and about the birth, the deep roots of NATO. NATO was, of course, formally established in 1949 in Washington, D.C., Washington Treaty, but the deep roots of NATO are much longer, established much earlier. When the Soviets started to push against Lithuanian partisan movement, freedom fighters, the last years of Lithuanian freedom fighters' activity were on the Polish side, and specifically in our beautiful hilly and forested farm, where there were 3 very sophisticated bunkers for the leadership: Daumantas, Vanagas, Kazimieraitis. These were the most important leaders in the years 48, 1950. I was not born yet. Of course, the Soviets, and here we have this Yalta agreement, which is some sort of a continuation of the Ribbentrop-Molotov Act since 1939. In 1945, the alliance of armies and societies that won the war, that is Winston Churchill, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and of course, Uncle Joe. Who was Uncle Joe? Uncle Joe was Joseph Vissarionovich Djugashvili, who has been one of the perfect killers in the history of the world, almost perfection. And those three guys went to Yalta, currently under the Ukrainian leadership, within the Ukraine, and they simply divided the world into the spheres of influence. Of course, UK was very much tired by the war. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who helped a lot the Soviets to win the Second World War, was kind of under the influence of this friendship. And you can now substitute President Trump in that place, the same sort of friendship that developed between Russia and America. Who could have guessed that? And they decided that all those anti-communist activities, Lithuanian freedom fighters will not get any support from the West. There will not be a Third World War. Freedom fighters believed and hoped that the West, once the Hitler is conquered, that the West will conquer another killer, Stalin. But it was not to be. So you can see that place here, Suwalki Gap, which I'm talking about. So one day, given that the British intelligence, MI6, was simply infested with Soviet spies. One of them was the great arch spy of Stalin called Kim Philby. He's buried in Moscow. Kim Philby was planted in the British MI6 intelligence and was charged with fighting Lithuanian and Baltic freedom fighters. So first of all, they not only militarily sent Russian troops and local collaborators to fight Lithuanian freedom fighters, but also cut their ties to the West, which were well established from the Suwalki Gap through Warsaw and Gdansk, Danzig, to the West, to Paris, to Rome, and to UK, and even USA. So materials about the Soviet occupation and crimes were being smuggled by Lithuanian freedom fighters to the West, and people with quite a lot of support from CIA and British MI6 were coming through the Suwalki Gap back to Lithuania. The border was forested, full of possibilities to avoid the Soviet troops. So one day, there was a huge onslaught of KGB and local Polish security forces, Służba Bezpieczeństwa, on our farm. Within a couple of hours, everybody was arrested and put in prisons, deported in animal rail wagons to some place in Pomerania in the forest. And I was born there, a communist slave. So that was the around the year 1950, 51, 52, 53, and 53 was can be probably regarded as the last year of very organized, with 10 military districts, armed opposition in Lithuania. Back to NATO. Why I say that NATO has deeper roots than Washington Treaty. Lithuanian freedom fighters collaborated on the Polish side with Polish anti-communist movements like Wolność I Niepodległość, which is freedom and independence, and with Latvian Forest Brothers and Estonian Forest Brothers. And Lithuanians, since they had a very good contact with the West, always moved the information to the West, asking for help, asking for some sort of Western action, but it was not to happen due to Yalta II. So we are actually right now in a very similar situation. You have heard that Russians are moving troops to the new member of NATO, Finland, 800 kilometers, doing all kinds of fortifications. So the issue now is very similar to what was in 1953 and later. Later on, of course, there was in the Baltic states and in Poland, there was a opposition, but less armed, actually more, in Lithuania it was more religious-based, Catholic Church, also other. In Poland, I was arrested at the age of ripe age of 15, 1-5, in the high school, because I set up a circle of friends to study for additional study of materials from history, economics, etc. So one day, again, like in the case of freedom fighters, there was a KGB and Polish security force invasion on our school. We were arrested, subjected to all kinds of quote-unquote re-education. And that was really very, actually I would say, continuation of what the freedom fighters, what freedom fighters did. We tried to use, as you know, Poland was kind of a bit, okay, thank you. Poland was kind of a somewhat luckier, unhappy communist, luckier but still an unhappy communist country. And as Stalin said, communism fit on Poland like a saddle on a cow. So obviously there were more and more degrees of freedom, and we tried to use those degrees of freedom. In my case, not only to sort of develop alternative models of alternative society, economics, but first of all, given the situation that we were in with the family, to underscore the importance of the Lithuanian freedom fighters and Polish freedom fighters. And that was, of course, a very bad behavior, according to the communist school managers. And I was, for 2 years, I was subjected to re-education. That re-education was sort of like additional work, reading Russian newspapers and standing like I stand currently before you, standing, and those managers who managed me, they asked me to always say mea culpa, mea culpa, that I did such a big crime to establish additional learning possibilities for my friends. These days it would be a big plus in Poland, in Lithuania, in Latvia. So this was a historic introduction, historic and personal historic introduction to the current situation, which is a continuation of Ribbentrop and Molotov and a continuation of Yalta after the war, 1945. But our situation is, the Baltic situation is so much better due to the collapse of the Soviet Union. We saw today, 35 years, the same for Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia. And I had later on, as the introducer already read, I was lucky enough, more luck than brains, to get a very prestigious American Fulbright Scholar of the U.S. Congress. And I went to study at universities in the USA, and also visited several universities for a longer time in Canada. Later on, I asked for political asylum in both USA and Canada, admitted in 2 countries, chose Canada. So the question right now is, how do we use this sacrifice by Lithuanian, Latvian, and Estonian freedom fighters to build societies that are good to live in? in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. One thing, two things actually already are done, namely the introduction, admission to NATO, one thing, and admission to the European Union. So the three countries have never been in that good situation in history. This is the best. But as usual, there are problems. So what we have is, of course, freedom. What we need is economic development, further economic development. So I do not want to introduce too much of economic jargon here, but well, let's say GDP, gross domestic product, is sort of something we bake through the whole year, a society, let's say Latvia. And this GDP, this product, this cake, is a function of labor, capital, and something called total factor productivity, which is technical science and technical progress. So in order to do introduce further progress, we need labor, we need capital, and we need science, technical progress. We, so far, and I have the data, the latest data of Lithuania, are pretty good. But with this L, we have a problem. Labor. We have a big immigration from all the three Baltic states. In 1991, in winter, just after the January 13 events in the Baltic states, especially Lithuania and Latvia, I was advising the Swedish government, Prime Minister Carlson, on the new neighbors that Sweden all of a sudden received from history: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. So I flew into European and North American cities and capitals to advise the Swedish government. From that on, later, I worked with the Hudson Institute in the USA with another expert commission. So even now, when I'm kind of retired from teaching, I still maintain that interest. And what I will propose is kind of controversial. So if we add, if we have that problem with labor, with people, not some emigrated, so what is the fastest solution for the Baltic states to matter all of a sudden in Europe? I would say, and this is controversial, Switzerland too, Confederation of the Baltic States. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. I understand different cultures, but historically, a very friendly neighbors. And once we have that Switzerland too, remember Switzerland, 3 languages, and now they introduce 4th language, English. So what I'm proposing is Switzerland too here. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. How to do that? Of course, all those societies have their political structures, and they need to approve wild proposals like that. So obviously, so to do research on that and to discuss perhaps that, I propose to establish what I call the Institute for Baltic Freedom and Prosperity. The Institute for Baltic Freedom and Prosperity would let's say in Riga, part of the University of Latvia or not, would establish the guidelines so that we start, the Baltics, we start to matter much more in Europe and in the world. Look, Canada has, thank you, Canada has what we call Canada-Europe Trade Agreement. Given the not too good experiences that we have with the USA recently, especially under Trump administration, Prime Minister Mark Carney will definitely be studying ways for Canada to replace Russia from supplying natural resources and other things needed for modern knowledge-based and green economy. Canada would be sort of a replacement for Russia, because Russia, first of all, Germany has learned extremely painfully how dangerous it is to rely on very unwise policy that Mrs. Merkel did. Germany is a country that is going down in all respects, industrially especially. So now the world needs transformations. Canada definitely can help Europe. And within Europe, if Canada sees that we are collaborating within the so-called freedom, Switzerland too, Confederation of the Baltic States, we can call it Confederation of the Baltic States, we will definitely gain. In this world, modern world, we have something to offer. We do. We have to offer not only a sort of increase, how it would be like 7 million people, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, and if they are collaborating more. Under the Soviets, it was everything from Lithuania to Moscow, from Latvia to Moscow, from Estonia to Moscow. We removed that. 35 years, we removed that. So we collaborate within the Baltic States, within Europe, and across the ocean with countries like Canada and with other countries in Asia, especially Japan, also, to some extent, with Latin American and African countries. So, rather than me talking ex cathedra, I want you to involve in discussion and see how these very, very controversial ways of our forward thinking can be perhaps aligned with the Baltic states, with parliaments, with the people, and whether you see it a realistic endeavor or perhaps not so yet, but the world right now is definitely undergoing global transformations. So now is the time to think about it. Now is the time to use all the blood that has been spilled by freedom fighters, Baltic freedom fighters and others, to use to a good and of course European Union, former Prime Minister of Lithuania, Kubilius, now chairs the effort to build the industry, defense industry of Europe practically from zero. And we need to further develop our economies to perhaps not only keep more people in the Baltic states, keep them from emigration, but also use the diasporas. Given the internet, it's 500 years that we didn't have that big invention like the internet. 500 years. So this is the time to use technology, to use forward thinking, and to use discussion, like within this my proposed Institute for Baltic Freedom and Prosperity, to move ahead. Thank you so much. Paldies.
Paldies. Thank you very much. Now, time for questions and answers. If we have any questions, just put your hand up and we'll get things going.
And please keep your questions rather on the short side if you can, please.
Val, thank you for coming to talk to us today. You and I have talked about some of these things a few times in the last 2 years, but you mentioned Switzerland too, and you talk about the size of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia being about 6-7 million people, and Switzerland also is surrounded by many other countries in Europe. How do you envision the Baltic states functioning as another Switzerland or a second model of Switzerland? You talked about technology and you talked about using Canada's resources to replace Russia's resources. So are we talking about shipping overseas and so we have a shipping connection through the Baltic Sea, is that right? But I don't understand where the role of the Baltic states is with regards to Switzerland too. Switzerland too, is talking about defense of the people, or I don't know. How do you see Baltic states as Switzerland too?
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Yes, indeed. Peter brought me to the wisest sentence that I've heard in my life. That the only thing that is important is bees, trees, and clean water. and he helps me with bees. The rest is not important, not gold, not US dollars that are going down. Well, of course, the Baltic Sea, that's right. Transportation, I studied also the maritime transportation, so I know that transportation is currently, even for gas, liquid gas, is not that difficult. And Germany already receives it from Norway and other countries. Other things by ships can be transported very easily and cheaply. But I think that the Switzerland too, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia would be at the front of technical progress. Let's say biotechnologies. I have certain ties with universities in Lithuania on biotech. And that can be done with the new ambassador, Meilunas, from Lithuania to Ottawa. We're already developing some ties between university research, let's say Vilnius University research on biotech, and University of Toronto on biotech. And the road from that level of research to production, commercialization, is not that long. And we know that the green economy is the future of the world economy. So it's not what Donnie Trump says, smokestacks and steel, and this is some sort of a totally old, 200 years old idea. Now, knowledge goes into the broad sphere of life sciences, and these economic systems more and more, if I may use that not polite word, ape biological systems. It's not Newton's mechanics. It's biological systems, bees, complex systems. How the complex systems work, like Peter knows, bees, how the complex systems works. And we can go all over the world to universities, research institutes, and use our diaspora. There's well over a million Lithuanians all over. And unfortunately, the fertility rate in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, I know, is below replacement. The replacement of the society, reproduction of the society, is 2.1 child per woman. And in the Baltic states, it's 1.3. So it's way below the replacement. So we have to do something with that. We cannot wait. Well, we didn't wait. We actually developed, and those countries, as I said, are really at the best point in history. But now the whole world is shaking. Geopolitical, geoeconomic earthquakes are developing everywhere. So we are now forced to think in terms of what can we contribute to the world?
I have a question. Okay, this is amazing to be thinking in a positive, new way about all of this. How about the Suwalki Gap? What do we do about that? And maybe it's good if you show on the map where that is.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't want to. I don't want to. I studied that. I'm an officer of artillery. I was forced to study artillery at the Artillery Academy for what was the supposedly free university education in Poland. But every Saturday and every summer I spent in polygons teaching my batteries. So I know that's a big pain. But first of all, we have new NATO members. Finland, very, very much experienced in fighting Russians and the Winter War. And we have Sweden, and we have finally the European Union that is finally going to the point where they will develop military industry. First of all, perhaps with the help of American companies, but then also European. So the Suwałki Gap is really, the problem is that this 105 kilometers red line from Grodno to Kaliningrad it is a line where they, if I want to be pessimistic, then Russians can do everything here. Let's say put a small atomic bomb, like really very small, here, and cut the Baltic states from Poland and the rest of NATO. So if they do that, then Germany would probably foil and would say, okay, don't do that. The small atomic bomb would totally change the situation. But General Hodges, American general, who was for some time commander of the NATO forces in Europe, long ago pointed that, and I studied that idea specifically because in these areas I was with my batteries and polygons, even in winter, shooting 20 kilometers and also anti-tank artillery. So the most important thing is to have Suwałki Gap always under observation. Well, that's American and British intelligence. And if there is a sudden move from Belarus to Kaliningrad, and they try to cut, these are only two lines. One is the road and the other is railroad, two lines that connect European gauge, that connect Poland with Lithuania. So if they suddenly move, if Russians suddenly move, then presumably British sit there over in the Arctic with atomic forces, can reply in kind if there is an atomic danger. But I think that it's probably given the whole attention the Suwałki Gap has received in the annals of military science and in NATO, etc., I think that Russians will not try to really move it, to really cut the Baltic states. It's too late, probably, because it has been discussed so much, so it's too late. Of course, the issue is whether the brigades, one of the brigades is here right now from Germany, and the Latvian, in Latvia there's a Canadian brigade, and there are several good brigades and tank forces in Poland here, and they can, the roads have been built. So let's say 5 years ago, I would have been much more pessimistic than now. I think that the Russians are not that stupid. They calculate everything. So what they would probably do, in my opinion right now, they would try to install Russian-friendly regimes in the Baltics. Oh, they would say, okay, so you Baltic states independent, that's only for your elites. They take everything, they fly around the world, and you poor people, you don't have anything. We can give you everything, oil, etc., free, etc. You know, that's that old story. And I think this is much, Russians calculate, and this calculation is more positive for Russia than the brutal invasion of the Baltic states.
Mūsu vēl viens jautājums, another question here.
I was going to ask about that corridor there, but you already explained about that. But my other question is, what's with the so-called second Yalta between Trump and Putin? They seem to be, sort of dividing the world up between the two of them.
Yes, and that's very controversial. I put this Yalta 2 with the question mark. It's very controversial. First of all, we don't know how the Trump regime, how strong is the Trump regime given all the economic data are going down. We don't know. Second, Trump is calculating. He is not too intelligent a person, but he does calculate at the level of grammar school. So obviously, if he sees that all the stock market and other economic data are going down, and now they supposedly signed that treaty with Ukraine to get minerals in the long term for the American industry. So that tells me that Trump is trying to go backwards a bit, because he sees that this will not work. So the general public opinion in the 21st century, with, as I stressed, internet, is really forming very quickly against autocrats or worse, and it's not that easy as in the 30s during the times when those two killers, Stalin and Hitler, collaborated and put out theories that could not be subjected to discussion, etc. Of course, Trump tries to, for example, tries to go against universities, against Harvard. So, I guess his MAGA close-knit MAGA portion of voters still are pushing him, but the situation right now compared to the 30s is so much different in favor of the public, in favor of collaboration, in favor of economic development, as opposed to let's kill each other, like was in the 30s. Well, of course, Europe is known for that. The history of Europe is a history of
Thank you,
wars.
Val. Val, thank you so much. We're going to move on to our final. We have one final quick question, if we could answer it rather quickly.
Last question here.
Actually, two questions. Question number one, I'm surprised that you don't talk about Kaliningrad and the encouragement of making Kaliningrad an independent country. I mean, that's the best thing to do. Question number two, your concept of confederation for the Baltic states, the best place to start with is in the diaspora. And I'd like to see where we would show as diaspora that we can do it here, then it would encourage the rest of the countries there to do it. And we're not doing it here.
Great question. The second is, you actually answered. I talked about diaspora, but 3 minutes left. So that's 100% agree with you. Kaliningrad, once you try to do something, then you are within 1 hour in the World War III situation. That's under Putin right now. Once you try to do some sort of independence or take over, then you immediately are in the World War III situation. And all options are open, including small atomic bombs. So I don't know. Kaliningrad is actually a military base. There's nothing there except military. Okay? My time is up. Thank you. Paldies.
Liels paldies, Val. Thank you very, very much for an interesting and thought-provoking presentation and a little bit of thank you from us. And
thank you.
okay, thank you again, and see you all next week.